I was trying to keep
I
the
need
rest
a
of the
hamburger.
projects from that time while everybody was off working on that one.
Wife made pork chops before I came.
Hey, that's a good project to work on, though.
Oh, yeah.
Mint in there.
Well, in Provo City Center was a cool project. Yeah. That one was,
That was.
Fixed our clock yet.
I toured it
It was
as soon as
out
it
2
was
weeks ago,
opened.
too.
Yeah, for the open house. And yeah, that's pretty cool. And I was in it
I'll
before.
take it up with your new mayor.
When we lived here. We lived in Utah while we went to BYU. And we moved Michigan. So we were in it. We actually had conferences in Springfield.
okay.
Previous, like before 2000. And after that, we came back and burned down. I was like, wow.
Okay, we got to beat 20 minutes from the work session.
I think it's like more like 18.
Get you started on time, 30 seconds.
Oh.
20.
Yeah, Steve and Roger did a pretty good job.
I'd like to welcome everyone out to Thursday, November 18th, 2021's regularly planned commission meeting. We will call this meeting to order, and we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Lauren Palmer.
Nice. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lauren. We do have a full quorum here. Are there any conflicts of interest with any of the items on the agenda tonight?
No. Nope.
All right, seeing none. I would like to recognize two things. First, Heather will be joining us online. I just want to verify Heather is there. All right, Heather. Thank you. And then also recognize Lauren Palmer, who's been on our planning commission. He actually will pretty soon no longer be with us, and he's actually sitting. He is our mayor-elect, and so congratulate him on that, and thank him for serving and working with the planning commission as long as he has. We'll move on to item 2.4 now, which is approval of minutes for the October 22nd, 2021 Planning Commission meetings.
I'll go ahead and recommend approval of the minutes for the October 21 Planning Commission meeting.
All right, thank you, Andy.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I didn't hear you, Heather. Awesome, thank you. All right, then we'll move on to legislative items. We do have a couple of items that are on for public hearings, both item 3.1 and 3.2. I'm just going to read the public comment and policy procedure. The purpose of public comment is to allow citizens to address items on the agenda. Citizens requesting to address the commission will be asked to complete a written comment form and present it to Wendy Thorpe, Deputy Recorder. In general, you will be allowed an individual will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission. A spokesperson recognized as representing a group in attendance may be allowed up to 5 minutes. And this policy applies to all public hearings. We'll move on to item 3.1 now, which is a request or recommendation of approval to amend the general plan land use designation from 3.475 plus acres of low density to agricultural residential. And we'll look at planning or city staff.
Yeah, actually, so these first two items on the agenda are from the same applicant. One's a general plan amendment, one's a zoning map amendment. So we'll start with the general plan amendment. This is for the reserves at the Sky Ranch. It was a subdivision you guys saw last year, about within a year ago, out there off of that road, Pioneer Road in 13400 South. The area the applicant's requesting to change the land use designation on is shown here in red. It's right here above the initial, I guess, phase 1 and phase 2 of the reserves at Sky Ranch. This will be phase 3 of that development. Initially, just a little background, I guess. Initially, when the applicant brought in the application, they wanted to include this section with the initial approval, but they were still in some land negotiations with the owners. Currently, this land is designated as, I'm sorry, did I skip that? Nope. Am I in the right one? Okay. So currently, it's zoned A1 agriculture. The general plan map has it designated as low-density residential. Again, the applicant's asking to redesignate that to agriculture. Looking at the draft general plan map, that area has been projected as agriculture on the draft general plan. Being if that plan is adopted, that request would be consistent with the future land use map. Again, here's the area they're looking to do. It's about 3.5 acres, 3.47 acres. They're proposing to amend the general plan map to agriculture residential. And again, with this request, the second item on this agenda is the rezone they're proposing, and they're proposing to rezone this from A1 agriculture to agriculture quarter acre. The reasoning behind this general plan amendment is to, again, extend that initial development. What they're kind of proposing is a 6-acre lot. This is just a 6-acre subdivision. Again, this is just an exhibit, just to give you a general idea of what the applicant is looking to do on that land. A little bigger view here. So there was a community meeting held on October 5th. I think they had about 5 people show up for this community meeting. There was some talk about, there's an existing irrigation line running through the property and some fencing concerns. Existing residents are kind of concerned with just animals and the vinyl fencing, which is required by ordinance. Be able to stand the abuse of large animals. Public notices were mailed on November 8th. We sent out 17 notices. We didn't receive any comments or concerns from neighboring residents from those notices. Again, this a little background information. This is an extension of the reserve at Sky Ranch. As I said earlier, the draft general plan actually designates this area as hillside agriculture residential. The applicant is, in this next item, will be requesting a rezone from A1 to 8.25. So the staff does recommend a recommendation of approval to City Council. If you have any questions for me, I know the applicant's here as well.
Any questions for staff?
What's the bare minimum for large animals? Isn't it a half acre?
Half acre, yeah. They are required a half acre for large animals. They can have up to 2 per half acre.
So there's 6 lots. 4 of the lots are under half acre, and then 2 lots are above that. So only 2 lots of the 6 would be eligible for large animals.
That's correct. I was going to discuss that a little further in the rezone. If you guys actually want to, add some zoning conditions, which were similar to the initial development, which is 85% of the lots. But we can discuss that in the next item if you'd like.
Okay.
Would you back up and just, I think I heard you correct, that the owner intended this to be part of that, the subdivision to the south, but he just couldn't reconcile things with the landowners?
Right, yeah. Initially, when the initial application included this portion, but they had some issues with the land negotiations with the property owners. Go back to this if you want to.
All right. If there's no other questions from the Planning Commission for staff, if the applicant's here, he can come up and just share any additional information on this application.
How are you doing tonight?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Good. It's been a while, a few months.
There you go.
Jeff Neal, I'm representing the reserve at Sky Ranch. This This is phase 3 of what would be our continuation of the subdivision we already have approved, and we're just following in line with what we've already rezoned that and what was required of us before when we brought the basically 34 acres through the city and already had that moving forward. And we kept our promise and we didn't change any of the lot sizes. You know, there are still 60 very nice lots, and the same here, we went for larger lots, with 6, and maybe we could have squeezed the 7th, but we opted for bigger lots. This property was owned by the Farley Rushton family, which is to the west, and so we purchased it from them. And I think 6 lots would kind of be a nice addition to the subdivision, which we're already doing. We accounted for this development and water retention, our current retention area that we're doing, in the first area that we're doing in the Reserve Sky Ranch. I don't know if you have any other questions for me.
I think mine's on the next item. When I call you back up, I'll probably ask you a question.
Yeah, I think we're well under the 1.8 units per acre density that would be allowed in that, and we have no plans to change any of the density there. Would be, in line with what we want to do there. So, if you think of anything else, let me know.
All right, thank you so much. Any other questions for the applicant real quick? All right,
No.
Thank you. Then at this time, I will open the public hearing. That was easy. I'll close the public hearing at this time.
Was there any online?
Then I will close the public hearing at this time, and then I'll turn to the Planning Commission for additional discussion.
I just had a question for staff. Do you feel like the concerns that the neighbors brought up with the irrigation and fencing and animals could all be resolved?
So as far as the irrigation goes, they did a lot of work to realign the existing irrigation line to the irrigation company's standards. We would require them to work with the irrigation company to relocate any of the additional piping and get a letter from them stating that the work is good. So,
Okay.
so no issues with that.
It's an open trench right now, an open irrigation line.
Yeah, so currently it's an open ditch. They piped the south portion, so I would assume that the irrigation company would have that be piped as well.
What's the zone surrounding this property?
It's A1, I believe.
A1? Yeah.
Currently, it's A1,
The reserve at Sky Ranch is 8.25 though,
right,
isn't
yeah.
it? Yeah.
To the south, yeah. it's
So is the city's master plan show this all as ultimately residential? coming
Yeah,
in?
right now, yeah. So the current master plan, the general land use map actually shows this entire area, prior to their general plan amendment, was all low-density residential.
So it's all going to become eventually
Agriculture.
8.25.
So in addition to the initial Sky Ranch development, so this additional portion will become 8.252 as well. That's what they're requesting.
Thank you.
I guess my only question for discussion is, if you look at page 68 at the bottom, it talks about 85% of lots to be 1/2 acre or larger, and that was a zoning condition imposed on the rest of the reserve at Sky Haven subdivision. So I guess the question on the Planning Commission is, do we continue to impose that, which would change what's allowed, because right now they only have 2 of the 6 that are actually 1/2 acres. And so that's the only question that I have, and I wanted to hear some opinions from the Planning Commission on that.
I'm not sure if that's an item you want to discuss with the zoning.
Yeah,
We're
so
still
this
in
is
the
the
general
general
plan.
plan.
Yeah, this is the background information. This is just the reserve at Sky Ranch. Is talking about that there's zoning condition imposed on existing. the reserve at Sky Haven to the subdivision, 2 units an acre density cap, and 85% of lots to be 1/2 acre or larger with large animal rights. And so that's what I'm referencing.
Something
But
might,
that's for the next
something
item,
may got mixed
right?
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Item 3.2, but yeah, something to,
yeah, that's the next one.
that's the
but
next one.
yeah, that's where I missed it. But that is the next one. But I think these may go hand in hand, so we
Yeah.
probably have to consider them together. So that's the only question I have in regards to this, and to hear the opinions of those on the planning commission of what they think.
And to address Andrea's question regarding the fencing, so our ordinance only requires that they install vinyl fencing in between agriculture and residential uses. And being that this is the same use, well, on the development, they're required to install fencing between agriculture and like residential uses or any uses. And it's only 6-foot vinyl is all they're required to install. So,
What did it say about a precast wall? What was that?
so that was part of some of the discussions I think they had with their community meeting. And on the prior subdivision as well, we did have some residents come in and were asking that they placed a precast wall instead of vinyl because they were concerned with their animals kicking through the fences and et cetera.
Is that a problem, do you feel like, in other areas of the city?
Not that I've heard of,
Okay,
so, I wouldn't know, to be honest with you.
okay.
Discussion?
I guess my question is, and this has kind of been in the back of my mind, and I don't know who could answer it, but why are we going for agricultural when it's already labeled as residential, planning to be there as residential, and the vast majority of your lots, including the subdivision that you did below, are under half-acre lots, so you can't have large animals anyway, so what's the purpose of having it be agricultural?
There's still additional benefits having agricultural, where they allow different things, and maybe,
And this is probably a reflection of local preference. When the developer, the applicant came to the city 2 years ago, year and a half ago, and met with staff and our former city planner, Bryn McDonald, when you look at the zoning map and that it's pretty much all agriculture, right? It's all A zones of various densities. We didn't have any abutting R zones. And we had talked about the potential of doing an R zone, because that is consistent with the general plan, the low-density residential. But it was the opinion of staff that a rezone request from A1 to A.25 would be more favorable, would be viewed more favorably by the community. The applicant was willing to do that. However, the A zone is not consistent with the general plan.
Right.
And so at the time for Sky Ranch, the previous 60 lots or 61 lots, we had the applicant do the general plan amendment and the rezone, just like they're doing tonight. So that was the thinking. So really just kind of looking at what does this community believe that they want to see here, and this was consistent with the public process that we went through last time. But as you know, we're looking at changing some of that, right, in the new general plan, right? And we were talking about this issue. We've already talked about it in the recommendation to the city council, so.
So it's more in the name
Right.
than anything else.
Right.
So if you label it agriculture, people
And
think,
as
well,
mentioned,
it's
there are
rural.
some agricultural rights that are still
it's the same.
protected, even on smaller lots. You can still do a few things in the A zone that you can't do in an R zone.
Okay.
yeah, there's some animal rights that are different amongst even agricultural 0.25 versus residential. And so,
Okay.
any other discussion? This is a recommendation to the city council on approval to amend the general plan land use designation on this particular application.
So maybe one quick point, I guess, we're voting on recommendations for general plan and zoning updates. They still have to come back to us for any
When the subdivision comes
subdivision
back.
when it comes back, and that's when we can have an opportunity to.
And one thing to think about is, and this is the next item, but I'll bring it up, is the recommendation, well, it has a minimum of 10,000 square feet, lot minimum. Well, unless there's a recommendation of limiting that to 6 lots, they potentially could get another one out, and
Yeah.
at that point, it would be allowed, because it
If
would meet
they
the
can get-
requirements.
right, if
there
they can meet
wasn't a
the
condition-
frontage and-
If there wasn't a condition on it.
But there's other requirements they
There
have
are-
to
there
meet too.
are.
Right.
But
Because
I-
I was looking at that as
yeah.
well, just to make sure that they don't get more, right? There's limits on the frontage, especially in the cul-de-sac, things like that. But, yeah.
But I also am looking at it from on that page 68. Are we literally changing what the requirements of this is, even though it's saying it's the same
Maybe we can
from the
put a,
last item?
and maybe we put a condition on that item
And so,
at that point.
I mean, and this is a recommendation only. I don't foresee not sending this on, but I do think recommendations potentially taking in mind these items need to be addressed. So,
I guess for my thought, we move forward with this one, and then we can have some of the other discussions in the next one. So,
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
yeah.
okay.
So with that, I will go ahead and make a motion that we provide a recommendation of approval for item 3.1 to the city council.
That.
All right, motion made by Andy, second by Jackson, and we'll call for a vote. Heather? Andy?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Forrester?
Yes.
And Jackson.
Yes.
I think I called him Forrester again. Forrest?
It's okay.
We'll let you vote again, Forrest. We got 2 votes out of him. That was wonderful. All right, then we'll move on to 3.2. That's what you get for watching TV. So item 3.2, and we'll turn it to city staff for additional details.
All right, this is the zoning map amendment portion of this request. I'll kind of scoot through this because we've seen all this. So again, they're requesting a rezone from A1 to 8.25. They're proposing a 6-lot subdivision at this time. They did hold a community meeting. So again, you know, this is an extension of the Sky Ridge, the Reserve of Sky Ranch. I guess part of this recommendation, I guess we'll just get to the meat and bones of this, I guess, is the initial development, phase 1, phase 2 of the Sky Ranch Reserves, there was a zoning condition placed on that property there that restricted them to, had a cap of 2 units per acre, and 85% of all lots had to be greater than half acre or larger, and that was to preserve the large animal rights. So in the ag zone, if you're over a half acre, you are entitled to those large animal rights. Anything less than that, then you can have medium and small animals. And council, I think they wanted to ensure that those animal rights were, you know, remained through a majority of that development. What the applicant was proposing with a 6-lot subdivision, and again, you know, you can't really base your decision off that, but looking at the size of the acreage of the actual, I guess, the extension of the development, it's 3.47 acres. So regardless, if we maintain the 2 acre limit as a zoning condition, they couldn't get any more than 6 acres on that expansion of that site.
6 units, right?
6 units, yeah, would be the maximum, even at 2 units per acre. Now we looked into adding the 85% requirement for the lots, being that what they're proposing is at 1.8, and even at 2.8, they're not going to get any more than 6 acres. Requiring them to have 85%, that would require 5 of those lots to be over a half acre. So that would leave them with probably a 3/4 to 1 acre lot left on that site. And I'm not sure how conducive that is to developing a cul-de-sac.
So it would just change from 6 to 5 lots, and then you'd have, okay.
Yeah, if we did the 85%, they'd have 5 lots. They still get the 6 lots. Just 5 of those. Well, it's hard to say with the roadway removed out of there. They may be limited to 5 lots if you gave them the 85%.
And the rest of the reserve at Sky Ranch is at 85% of lots or half acres?
That's correct. 85% of those lots are over a half acre.
Do you know if it's 85% or over 85%? I know it's a weird question, but in my mind, I'm wondering if the overall development would be 85% still.
Yeah, if both of them combined would be 85%.
That's what I'm wondering.
That's what we're wondering.
That development itself is 85% or larger.
Always so precise. They're so good at that.
And if I do recall, they met that 85%, and that's where they stopped. I don't think they included any more half-acre lots than 85%.
Okay.
So I guess, if you feel it's appropriate to add that recommendation, staff.
So they're exactly 85% and not, say, 88, and there's 3% that could be added towards the other?
No.
Right.
Well, I'm not looking at this as the 85% requirements. That's a zoning condition applied specifically to that parcel that development's on. So that's separate from this actual parcel.
Okay.
So yeah, that zoning condition didn't encompass this piece of property.
Okay.
So this zoning condition would be specific to this piece of property.
Okay, thank you. We'll let the applicant come up.
I don't know if you have any questions for me, but, we're trying to go in line with with what we did in the first subdivision we came through. And I don't know exactly off the top of my head how many halves we had there, but I think we had a little room percentage-wise if we looked at it like one subdivision. But I still think with 6 lots, it's not a big impact, and we're not going to increase that. It actually is advantageous for the type of homes we build, where we build custom homes, to have bigger lots. And this is kind of like our gem in the back of the subdivision with bigger lots, a nice cul-de-sac, a nice like finishing touch to the subdivision.
All right, any questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none, I'll let you have a seat.
Okay.
This is on for a public hearing as well, so we will open the public hearing at this time. And we'll close the public hearing at this time then. Now, this is the only thing that, this is why I brought it up. I'm glad it was put in here. The 85% of lots to be 1/2 acre or larger. The only thing that, it's always my fear is setting precedent on things and having that it's always already been approved 85% amongst the rest of the development, and now there's a new part adding in that wants to be under that. That's the only thing I ever fear, because it potentially will change our ability with other projects, because they always look at it as, well, you set precedents in this, and that's my fear. And I guess I'll ask city staff on it if there's any worries of things like that, because I look at it as it's a good cul-de-sac. There's 6 good sized lots and everything else, but I fear we put a zoning condition on the overall development, but then we changed it halfway through on how we look at that.
So, as you know, Sheldon has been reviewing this a little more closely than I have. I worked on the first one. I believe we were thinking that 85% was just on the west side, the abutting side towards the larger lots.
For a buffer.
Outside of the project, right?
For a buffer.
Yeah.
Can we verify that?
Right.
Is that the case?
Yeah, just looking at the plots, you can see only on the left side does it even.
Yeah, I was
close
looking
to
at the
it.
map and I didn't think
Yeah,
that
there's
looked
no
like the
way that
case.
85% of those lots are over half acre.
Now, the zoning condition, though, only applies for that original phase.
Right.
Are you suggesting that as a commission, you're interested in applying that
No, that's what
zoning
I'm trying
condition
to
the new
understand.
lots?
I'm trying to understand if it applied to the entire first phase or how that worked, because it would change how I would look at this one. Does that make sense? Because if it's only a buffer on one side, then it makes more sense. If it's the entire development had that 85% and now we're dropping below that 85%, it changes the scenario of what I feel like we can or can't do.
Well, we certainly met the ordinance with the first phase, and you don't have to necessarily extend that zoning condition to this new phase. You wouldn't have to do that. Is the zoning condition only, is limited to the legal
Right.
property line of the prior phase.
So was that zoning condition put in place just because of the location of that lower portion, because it was abutting those other properties on the west side, and it was,
Yeah.
truly is only
It
the west
sounds like
side?
I
it's
just
just
want to
the
double
buffer.
check
That's
the
what it
record.
sounded
Yeah,
like
that's
to
what it
me.
sounds
Yeah,
like.
let me double check the record on
And
that.
so from this, I look at it from the perspective of the two lots on the end of it, definitely have 1, 2, 3, they have at least 3 homes right there. And the ones on the right side have larger lots as well. So it's more or less, where do we establish the buffer here? I mean, they're providing 2 of them. And do we feel like this sufficiently allows for the buffer that we look for? Because that's usually what it comes down to. We try to buffer between larger landowners as we go from one area to another. And so, thank you, Clint, for looking that up. That makes a lot more sense now to me, because I don't think it's 85% of the overall development. As I said, it didn't look that way, but it's hard to tell from some of these maps. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah. And I echo that too. I'm in favor of it. We just make sure, like Chris is saying, we're not setting some precedents of changing something partway through.
Yeah,
So,
and I'm pretty comfortable with, it looks like there's a 3 at the top that actually have homes on them, where that's the 2 largest lots in the cul-de-sac. And so that would provide some sense of buffering.
2 out of the 3.
And yeah, and so I'm more comfortable with it as well. I was just worried that 85% was the full development, and I don't think I'd want to have a zoning condition on one of them, and this technically being part of it, but not requiring the same zoning condition. But I think the 85%, what occurred was those on the west side as well,
Because
as a
of the
buffering.
properties. Yep.
From a zoning administrative view, it's not a difficulty for staff to have a difference between the 2 phases of the subdivision.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm comfortable with it.
Yep.
Any other views? I think it looks like a nice cul-de-sac. I'd go live there, but I like my cul-de-sac.
Yeah, my only view is I don't like cul-de-sacs. I think they're useless. So, and we have plenty of them already in the city.
Love it.
So, but
I love
it is what it is, and it meets kind of what the planning has already agreed of.
I will say, we have talked about connectivity with this partner, and I believe there was an attempt to even acquire additional property, even have more connectivity,
Sure.
but it looks like that didn't work. So there was an effort there.
Yeah. No, it'd be different if it went all the way up to Herriman Highway and they had an avenue to get there, but it is what it is, so.
Well, could there, off of this cul-de-sac, be a trail or pedestrian connection for a future?
They don't own any of the property through, so we'd have to have it planned out for the next property as well.
Are there any
But
future?
could a little trail be preserved for a future pedestrian connection?
It's not part of our trail plan right now, doesn't,
Oh,
no,
okay.
it's not
Yeah.
on the city's plans.
Okay.
Is this the last phase of this reserve at Sky Ranch, or is there going to be additional phases?
Yes, if the applicant wants to come back up and to address it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this will be the last phase. We've approached every property owner on all sides. We purchased it from the property owners to the east, and the other ones have homes on it to the north. And they didn't want to sell and tear their homes down, right? And so, and then the one to the west, we approached them and they had no desire to sell. So, but we did fix a property line, a fence line issue with them and have a good relationship. They just didn't want to sell.
Okay.
But this will be our last phase here. Not saying we won't build somewhere else in Herriman, but
Yeah, sounds great.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
I see there's not much connectivity out of the,
Yeah, it looks like 134 has 2 outlets and Rose Canyon has 1.
Yeah.
So, any other discussion, or I'm looking for a motion, which would be a recommendation to the city council?
I'll make a motion to recommend the approval to amend the city's official zoning map for the property located at 3.2.
A motion made by Forrest,
I'll second it.
second by Daryl, and we'll call for a vote. Heather? Andy?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
Jackson?
aye, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll move on to item 3.3, which is request for a recommendation of approval to amend 10-16-1 regarding uses in the C1 zone. And this is on for a public hearing as well. And so, city staff.
All right, good to be with you tonight, as always. This is a request from Charlie Bartlett. He is here with us tonight as well, to make this amendment. His initial proposal was to amend the C2 zone. However, working with him, after his date of application, we determined that the C1 zone would actually be more beneficial to the to his use going into the future here. So, the proposal is to amend the city's use table ordinance. So we'd be looking at how it impacts the general plan and then the zoning ordinance as well. So the applicant, there's 2 parts to this. The first is the reason for the text amendment is that the applicant desires to locate a church. It's the property that they own at 5230 West Herriman Boulevard. And currently it's split zoned as C2 and R210. It's also made up of 3 different subdivisions, well, 3 different parcels. So if this is approved, then the applicant will come back, rezone the property to C1, and then also do a subdivision, which will come before the commission as well. As this application came in, the city, being as advantageous as we are, decided that it would be good to remove a use that we don't feel is appropriate in the C1 zone, which is the warehouse personal service. So we're kind of piggybacking on the applicant's proposal here, and we'll get into the details of that a little bit more. So this is the property that the applicant owns currently. You can see the different zoning and the different parcels there. And then this is what would be zoned as C1 in the future, potentially, if everything goes according to plan. So again, very simple proposal, just changing or just allowing churches or places of worship as a conditional use. And then from the staff proposed amendment, removing warehouses and personal service from the C1 zone. In terms of general plan compliance, the general plan goal is to ensure the future needs of schools and other public services meet future demands. With the growing population in Herriman, it's likely that additional worship services will be needed, and so this is a good use for that. This allows that use to take place in more locations to serve the growing population. In terms of general plan compliance, in terms of the mapping anyways, the current designation for the property is it's a commercial designation, which allows the C1, C2, and the office professional. And the draft general plan, which we anticipate will be approved in the next few coming months, we hope in early 2022, it does separate commercial into a couple different types. First is general retail, which would be more in the vein of what we see in the C2 zones, serving a higher intensity, more regional type of use. And then neighborhood commercial, which would support a C1 zone. From the general plan, neighborhood commercial is described as smaller scaled commercial uses that are accessed via walking, biking, or driving. Something that's a little more conducive to providing services directly to the community around it, the neighborhoods around it. So again, the applicant's property that he is proposing to, that he will be proposing to rezone is shown here as commercial, and then in the draft general plan is shown as neighborhood commercial, which would be more inducive for the C1 zoning versus the C2 zoning. The purposes of the C1, again, are to provide the neighborhood commercial type of development, serving the general neighborhood. And a church use does serve that neighborhood area, which is consistent with the zone, with the C1 zone. However, the personal warehouses serves more of a regional zone, a regional area, and is not consistent with that C1 zone. There still are places that, well, I'll get into that in a second here. So the adverse effects on the property, the church is consistent with other uses in the C1 zone. The warehouse is not. There are two C1 zones which have personal warehouse in them, and they will be considered as legal non-conforming going forward, which allows the use to continue for as long as they want to. Any enlargements or additions will not be possible the way the ordinance currently is, but future modifications might be available to these property or to these existing properties now. And there are additional properties in the city that are zoned M1 that type of use is appropriate on and could be located into. So our recommendation is to approve the findings shown here and to recommend approval of the text amendment as it's been shown to you tonight. If there's any questions, though, I'd be glad to answer what I can.
Go ahead, Andrea.
I had a question. Will you go back to the map of the property?
This one?
Yeah. Is there one that was a little bit bigger? This one, yeah. So, or actually the one that says where the commercial can be. Maybe that last one again, sorry. So the areas in red, it looks like most of those are not developed yet, right?
Correct.
There's only the one next to it, which is the horse equestrian thing. So right next to it is equestrian thing, if I remember correctly.
So the two north, as we were talking about in the work meeting, if a church is built here, then restaurants with alcohol licensing could not go in those two vacant
Have to be
commercial.
300 feet away.
Do you think that's 300
Is it-
feet?
Would that be,
I think it was 600 feet, but so if the church went on this location here, the closest, the closest available location would be more than 600 feet away from that.
so both the one on the left and the right, commercial, are both?
Far enough
And it's anticipated, one of the things that has been considered with the general plan is that property to the left, kind of that triangular piece, that is being considered to be changed to residential. And then I think as well, some of that property to the east of the development is going to be changed to residential. But that's consideration, right? That may or may not happen. But all the same, it would restrict. I don't anticipate any type of restaurant or alcoholic beverage use to come into those areas. I don't think it will be very impactful. I don't think that those locations would be suitable for that or attractive to that kind of use, but that's just
So
me.
that area is directly west of where the garage grill is almost.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, I think it's actually going to all commercially be developed except for that corner one to the farther west, because I know exactly what that land is. That's a weird shaped one.
Yeah.
So my question is, so the 600 feet, is that from property line or
So-
building?
Just to clarify, I apologize, and
Yeah.
and Clint's trying to remember what we talked about in
Yeah.
the work meeting. So for restaurants, it's 300 feet measured by ordinary pedestrian travel. So that means you've got to, walk down along the block, go to a safe pedestrian crossing and go across the street and back. Or 200 feet measured in a straight line. And then for other types of alcohol-related licenses that the state issues for like maybe a bar, because that's not a restaurant, remember the change in the state law, it has to be 600 feet by pedestrian travel or 200 feet measured in a straight line.
Well, the 200 feet measured in a straight line is building to building.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not lot lines, or obviously, so, okay.
Yeah, and I know there's the equestrian center, there's a storage, and then there's the little shopping with the gas station on the corner there on what's right next to it in the C2, and then a crossway obviously is undeveloped at this point, both diagonal sides. And that's the one thing that I wanted to ask, and Andrea beat me to it, she's much better than I. But how do we, I like the change, I think it's a wonderful change. How do we get to where it doesn't limit the ability for a restaurant in a C2 zone next to it to actually become a restaurant, or to put a restaurant in a C2 right next to it? That's my only fear of how do we do that? Because 200 feet, 300 feet, and I look at it from the perspective of this is a great piece of land for a church. I love it. Love the idea. But I also can foresee, and you may not, but I foresee on the northeast corner diagonally across, I could totally see those become restaurants in that commercial area. Because I think once Garage Grill goes in, we have more residential that goes farther west, that this area, and then it's right off Mount View. I mean, you're talking about you pull off Mount View, and then right where the black line is where you turn into where Garage Grill will be in, and Winco and all that. That's the street right there that goes in almost. And so, and actually you can see it. You can see Herriman Main Street. That's where it goes straight across. So I can very much so imagine that being a restaurant there.
So in looking at that lot though too, I think, well, a couple things. So the 200 feet, you've got what, the right of way out there is 100 feet just for Herriman Boulevard. You're gonna be easily
Yeah, as
200
long as
feet
we're
away
200
for
feet.
this one. Yeah.
I just don't want to, I don't want to put this ordinance in, or not ordinance, but this change in place and limit every place a C1 touches. You won't have a restaurant. There's no way these C2s will ever have restaurants once that occurs.
But as mentioned, I think the C1, there's not a lot of C1 currently.
Attached to C2s.
Well,
Something
even
that-
C1s, period, within
Yeah.
the city, right?
Yeah, I
at
get
this
it.
time.
That's one thing I want
Yeah.
to,
Something that's even more restrictive in terms of where a restaurant could go. So directly to the west of that property that you're talking about, that's all commercial, that's all residentially zoned. So that's going to be more restrictive than placing a church on this property. They're already required to be, 300 feet away from that residential zoned property. Allowing this property to rezone to a church is going to be
No, that-
further away
that
than
answers
those
my
residential
question.
homes.
all right.
And likely the church are gonna be on the west side of that, looking at
Yeah, the
kind of
church
on the
is gonna-
larger end of it
right.
anyway. So,
Right, and I'm agreeing with Andy. It just, because of the limited use of C1 and the 200 feet in this particular instance, it's just not going to be an issue.
it won't be an
So-
issue in this instance, but hopefully not in
So
others.
I'm trying to remember, so with the change, how far do you have to be away from residential to have a restaurant with a liquor license then? Because I don't know what that is, because I'm trying to think of locations. Like, if we look at Redemption, it's still pretty close to residential. I look at across from Cafe Rio, About Time, and that's a rock's throw from residential. And you could walk out the back of it and jump the fence, and you're 30 feet from residential. And so I'm trying to figure out I don't remember hearing what the limitation is to residential and restaurants. I just don't want to have us change this to a C1 and then all of a sudden not allow potential restaurants or other things like that to come in. And so I guess I want to understand what can and cannot be allowed here. I mean, is there something that's changed with how close to residential restaurants can be? Because I don't remember what that is. I'm not saying there isn't, I just don't remember what it is.
Are you taking some measurements over there, Andy? Is
I am. I was just looking from the front door About Time, which is to the closest house, it's less than 200 feet.
Yeah.
But that's even,
It's
that's the
easily.
front door. So I don't know.
Well, that's the back door.
Well, okay. The west side of the building.
So that's what I'm trying to remember, because if that's the case, I want to find a solution. I think this is a great location for the church regardless, and I want a solution there. I just want to make sure this is the best solution for it. And so that's what I want to try to figure out.
I think it sounds like we'll be able to get a restaurant, no big deal. It would just limit bars.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want a bar there. I don't want a bar next door to, which About Time is a bar, by the way, which is interesting. But anyway.
But But yeah, if we can get restaurants and economic, and the economic
Yeah,
activity.
I just
for
want to make sure
restaurants.
that we still have that protected in that sense. And you're right, that may not be what goes in there, but I don't want to limit the ability to have that. And all of a sudden establish a C1 zone that all of a sudden every C2 around every C1 zone is no longer going to have, if a church or something like that goes in, we just won't be able to have restaurants anymore. And
So I
so,
think that requirement that Mike read, the 200 feet building to building or 300 feet closest walking
Yeah.
distance, I think that applies to both residential and like a church type of
okay. Can we
application.
just verify that?
So the proximity restrictions, it talks about to a community location.
What about residential homes?
So it says community location is defined as a church, public or private school, a public park, public playground, or a library.
Okay, so it's not residential.
Trade or technical schools, infant daycare centers, and nursery schools are not considered community locations, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
so neither is a
residential is
residential.
not
Okay.
listed.
And it's just the building itself, not the property, correct?
Now,
Yes.
now this summary doesn't
this is the
say
best-
that, but I believe that's how it's been interpreted
Yeah.
by other
That's
municipalities.
what I thought too. I remember when it came out, getting taught by legal about what it meant. But I'm not an expert like legal was. And so, but I just want to make sure that, and I think changing the C1 and approving that, I think would be okay. But I just want to make sure that we don't limit the commercial that potentially could go there. Because I'd much rather figure out a different solution if that's going to limit the capabilities of having a restaurant if they choose to go there and things like that.
Hey, Chris, there's a 200-foot radius from the corner
Oh,
of the
so we're-
property.
so we're
You got-
good.
You got
So we're
tons of
good,
room.
we're good.
You got
And
tons of
so I mean, my only recommendation or thought on it is making sure the C1 doesn't limit other locations. And that's my only thought then.
And we'll make sure we'll share that with the city council, but there's very little C1 in this
And
city.
see, that works.
Yeah.
And it looks like
most
we're
of it's
good.
developed. Most of it already is developed.
Andy took an amazing circle with a line and showed me how far 200 feet are, or 300 or whatever. We're good there, guys.
But this is a permitted use, though? Or-
It'll be a
It'll be
conditional
conditional, so they still has to come, yeah, so.
They'll still come back.
So
to
we'll
the
still
commission
come
for
back to us to see any of those.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that changing it, in this aspect, changing it to a C1, I don't think that that's going to be the problem. I do see traffic being an issue, and it'll be very tricky to put a church on there and have traffic going up and down Herriman Boulevard, because that's your only access. You don't have.
It might be a
access.
right in, right out only, because I think the gas station is going to turn out like that as traffic
Yeah.
increases
But that's
too.
that's putting
So-
the
and I
cart
think
before
that's
the
fine.
horse. So
Yeah, I think that's fine, a right in,
let
right
them
out. I don't think that'll be a
figure that
problem.
out.
Especially with the
Yeah,
intersections on each end.
yeah. And we may even be able to get a little turn lane at the end or something
Yeah.
to help out, or, well, I'm not as worried about that. I
Or
think
align
they'll
it with
figure that out.
the resident street on the
Yeah.
other side.
Yeah, and oftentimes the busiest times for churches is totally different time than major traffic.
It's true, but most of the volume was all at the same time, whereas, a neighborhood, it's sporadic throughout the day.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's, like I said, that's putting the cart before the horse, so.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that on this
That'll come
development
when site visit
location
stuff
right now.
comes.
Awesome. Any other questions? No. We'll let the applicant come up.
Good evening. I'm Charles Bartlett, representing Lifestone Church, and I have our lead pastor, Ben Helton, with me also. And I'd just like to say that the city has been very welcoming to Lifestone Church, and so we appreciate that. And we're very excited about establishing a permanent presence in the Herriman community. And then my last thought, pursuant to your discussion here this evening, our plan to develop the property, it would put the building on the west end, and then the east end will have, parking spaces to, again, emphasize your conclusion. Subsequent to any questions, that's all I have for you this evening.
No, we're glad to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, any questions for the applicant?
I had a quick question. Will the daycare be just on your Sunday, during Sunday services, or will it be all week?
I'm sorry, I'm planning to have my hearing tested.
Oh,
Next
sorry.
time I see the doctor, could you restate?
The daycare, will that just be for Sunday or will that be all week?
We are actually looking at having, well, worship services will be on Sunday, but a joint use building with a child care, daycare center as well, so there will be daily activities on the property.
Thank you.
Awesome.
That's great.
That'll be a great service.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this item is on for public hearing as well, so let's open the public hearing at this time. Did we receive anything via email? Okay. Then we will close the public hearing at this time, and we'll turn to the Planning Commission for additional discussion and recommendation to City Council with a motion.
I guess we should have had most of that discussion after the hearing.
Yeah.
I know.
But
I know.
anyhow.
I wanted
Okay.
to ask a couple questions, and that way the
And then we
applicant,
got too far into it.
yeah, that way the applicant could address them if there was any need.
Very good.
I appreciate the design or the comments and conversation. I think it was worthy and worthwhile to ask. I also want to applaud the applicant. I think it'll be a good amenity for Herriman. As we grow, we become more and more diverse in our citizenship, and diversity in worship is a good thing too.
All right, guys, if there's no other discussion, looking for a recommendation to City Council with their motion. All my questions were answered. Obviously, my biggest fear is just the C1 zone in other places in the city, and maybe good to at least bring that to the attention of City Council.
It was. I'll make a motion, recommendation to approve item 3.3 to amend 10-16-1 regarding uses in the C1 zone.
I'll second that.
Motion by Darrell, a second by Jackson, and we'll call for a vote. Heather? Andy?
Yes.
Darrell?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
And Jackson?
Yes.
All right, that motion is approved for recommendation to City Council. We'd like to thank the applicant for attendance, actually both our applicants tonight. We'll move on to item 4, which is just additional comments made by either the chair or commission, if any. All right, seeing none, is there anything, Michael, you'd like to share?
I wanted to just reassure the commission. I found the minutes from the council meeting when they approved that previous rezone with the zoning condition that was added. It was a motion by Councilmember Shields, and he specifically stated that 85% of the lots abutting the western border of the development allow for agricultural use for 2 large animals. So
Awesome.
it was what we were recalling. Yeah, it was memorialized in a little bit shorthand version, but that's the language of the motion.
Perfect. That makes it easy. All right, and then future meetings. Thursday, December 2nd, 2021 will be Planning Commission meeting. Wednesday, December 8th, 2021 is City Council meeting. And then Thursday, December 16th, 2021 is Planning Commission meeting. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. See ya.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.